Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. And let me welcome you once again to I Am Shakti, a celebration of extraordinarily brave and competent women that all of us have had the fortunate of knowing, of meeting all through our lives. This celebration is special not only because we are bookended by the festivals of the great goddesses, from Durga Puja to Kali Puja, Durga and Kali, the two great women who confronted the demons in their lives. But I'm also here to, and I'd like to say, that we are here to celebrate the courage of, the unsung courage of ordinary women, of women like you and me, who have the courage, who have the extraordinary strength to go on with their lives on a daily basis, every day, every hour, every moment, every week. And this is what I'd like to focus upon. But first, let's talk a little bit about extraordinariness. What is it that makes us extraordinary? Is it the fact that some of us are born into great wealth, some of us inherit big legacies of famous names? But most of us, I think we have this courage, the courage, the unsung courage, if you like, to keep moving on, to say that we are not going to give up. I think that's what makes an extraordinary woman who she is, and very, very special. This morning I have the privilege of being in conversation with two women police officers, one of them who joined the police force in 1977, Kanwaljit Deol, and Sundari Nanda, Shivagami Sundari Nanda, who joined 11 years later in 1988. I think the stories of these two women, I'm sure, will enlighten us, will help us in our own lives in confronting the challenges that we have in our own lives. And without much further ado, may I welcome on stage Kanwaljit Deol and Sundari Nanda. Come, Sundari. To introduce Kanwaljit Deol, Ms. Deol joined the Indian Police Service in 1977, has been a police officer all these years for the last 38 years, and is now the Director General Investigations in the National Human Rights Commission. Sundari Nanda joined the Indian Police Service in 1988. Both are officers of the UT cadre, am I correct? And is now in the Delhi Police as a Special Commissioner Operations. So I will ask Ms. Deol to make a few remarks, and followed by Sundari, and then perhaps we'll open the house to questions.
Good morning to all of you. And thank you, Jyoti, for the introduction. And I would first like to express that I'm really honored to be here and to have an opportunity to share some of the things, concerns, as well as areas where I hope that younger people will take on, move further. So I just limit myself to about 5 minutes.
Yes.
Yeah. As you already know, I joined the police service when there were very few women in the police service. And we were just discussing that though there are now a sizable number of women joining the police, we are still a very, very small percentage. This is, of course, one of the great concerns that we have as women in the police leadership. We have had all these years, is how to increase the percentage of women in the police. The thing is that at the present moment, what happens is that when women are in such small numbers, they take on the culture, the subculture of the police force, which is the male police force. And as a result, we don't find them performing or bringing the necessary empathy, let's say, or the necessary skills that women do possess. Because you're going to be judged on, how you match the current subculture. So, for instance, we do manage to get women in police stations, in charge of police stations, but they feel that unless they are rough and unless they use the kind of language which is current, they won't be successful, because there's such a small number. So, on one hand, we have to insist that bring women up to a critical mass within the police force so that they begin to behave like women, and so that the public that they serve actually gets the benefit of a woman in that position. Right now, the public says the women officers are not very much different from the male officers. On the other hand, women who are, because they are again in small numbers, they get sidelined, they get decorative jobs, they get posted in, as receptionists, computer, this, that. So again, the public doesn't really get the benefit of women. So one of the things which I would like this gathering to consider is that we should be aiming at, since we have a population which is about 50% women, we should be aiming at a much higher representation of women within the police force. As far as my own experience is concerned, I would say that a police officer needs to be not just legally sound, not just have integrity, but also needs to have a lot of empathy, needs to have a lot of understanding. And therefore, I think in any line of work that we are in, we need to go beyond ourselves. We need to have a balance between, let us say, the individual and others. I've been a part of the women's movement right from, spiritually at least, or, not as a police officer, but always had a feeling for the women's movement. And my first feelings were at that time that women were not individualistic enough. They were too concerned about the family, about the husband, about, as young people, not to be better than your brothers, as once you get married, not to sort of be ahead of your husband, and not to give up your children despite your work. You had to do both things equally well. So they were not concerned enough about themselves, and as a result, I thought women's development was being stunted. Now, after all these years, I feel that we have come a long way. But I don't want to go the wrong way, that where we become so individualistic, that everything is only about us, us, us. And that is one of the pitfalls that we can go in this I am Shakti type of consideration. We have to realize that our Shakti is a balance between how good we can be individually and how we can use that good for others. And that is an important aspect which I've come to now after so many years. As a police officer thinking about women's safety, my first point still stands that there should be many, many more women. It is really a power thing. Sexual crimes, for instance, are also a power thing. It is just that the perpetrator feels he's stronger than you, and he wants to express that strength. If, for instance, you have women all over in uniform, let's say Connaught Place, you find everywhere you turn, you find a woman in uniform, it immediately changes the power equation in perception. So therefore, I think that is one very important aspect. And the second important aspect of safety for women is that women have to come out of a feeling of powerlessness. That is coming individually from the women. With these opening remarks, I'd welcome any other questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Deol. Sundari, you joined the police service 11 years after Kanwaljit Deol. Some of the issues that she's raised about how sexual violence is really about power, do you feel that when you joined the force, that things had changed a little bit, that you were able, your husband is a police officer, that were you able to put yourself in front of him, or were you always a little bit behind in the shadows?
before that, I would in fact before answering your question, I would like to thank Mail Today for having me over, and also that today I am extremely privileged to share the dais with Mrs. Deol, who is my quote-unquote, is my guru in service, because many years ago when I joined service, I actually trained under her when she was the DCP New Delhi. And we were in the throes of the Mandal Commission agitation. And I would like to, in fact, I agree with all that ma'am said, but I would like to perhaps give you an anecdote to say what, to highlight what difference a woman civil servant, a woman police officer can bring about. Many years ago, when ma'am spoke about empathy, many years ago, I remember when I came to the union, to join Delhi Police, to the Union Territory cadre from my parent cadre in Tamil Nadu. I was a young, lost probationer, I guess. I was, apprehensive. I'd come to Delhi. I was not too familiar with the language. And when I reported in ma'am's office, and she was in police headquarters, and she was 10 years senior to me, and I, at that point in time, till today, I'm so grateful for the empathy she showed, because I was to come on field training here, and at that seniority, I remember on that cold winter day, she sent her car to have me personally dropped off at the DCP's office. I was a young ACP at that time, to drop me off at the DCP's office. Now that kind of empathy, and that is something what women officers, whether it's police or whether civil servants, that is the kind of empathy we bring to the table, and we should continue bringing to the table, because we are unique in the fact that we are women, and I strongly believe that we should not try to be imitation men. We should not try to be second-class men. I'd rather be a first-class woman and maintain my identity. And with that,
I think that's beautifully said, that you don't want to be pale imitations of men who perhaps are not doing their job very well. But a question to both of you. How has the service changed, Sundari, in the 11 years after Ms. Deol joined the service? And Ms. Deol, in your 38 years of service, how has, say, for example, Delhi Police, which sometimes doesn't get the reputation that you may believe it deserves, how has it changed over the years?
Well, you see, a very positive change. At the outset, I would like to share with the audience what we were discussing in the lounge, is that I think the police, Delhi Police, and police across the country are doing a lot of good work. But I think there is one area where perhaps we need to really pull up our socks on, and that is perception management. And it is also that, fortunately or unfortunately, it is that anything wrong in the police story makes big news, makes headlines. But a lot of things which are right in the police story do not make the headlines, because people, for some reason, and I think it's fair for me to want to emote at this particular, in this gathering, about what I feel so strongly about, because there's so much of good which the police do. And as we sit here today, for example, in the Delhi Police Control Room, there are women who are attending to about 1.5 to 2,000 distress calls a day. There are women who are sitting there with 4 shifts throughout the day, counseling women, talking to them. Now, does this ever get highlighted in the press? Does it ever get highlighted that these women, despite great odds, and our girls, some of them still face these very patriarchal mindsets back at home? They get up in the morning, they get ready, and they come, they report for the 8 o'clock shift, and they're counseling and they're helping 2,000 women on an average per day, the kind of distress calls we get on the women's helpline. So a lot of work, a lot of sensitivity regarding women has come into the Delhi Police. And I think Delhi Police is actually doing its best, its utmost to help the cause of women. There are challenges before us, and most of the challenges are those of society, because a lot of attitudes that help that cause the perpetration of crime against women we must understand that that stems from society.
So, in a sense, you're saying that you're being unfairly blamed in a lot of cases by the media while you do incredibly good work. And I'm sure that's very true, because in a sense, the media tends to pick out the ugly parts and sort of, reflect that or manifest that, perhaps. But Ms. Deol, can I ask you, you've been a police officer for 38 years in various parts of the country. But since we're sitting in Delhi and, 3 years ago, unfortunately, I'd like to sort of just talk to you a little bit about the Nirbhaya episode, when Delhi police was criticized pretty severely. And, but as a woman police officer, how do you think that was handled, both by yourselves? How do you think the media handled it? Can we talk a little frankly about that, perhaps?
Okay, before I come to that, I'd like to answer your first question, which is how do I feel that the police has changed since I joined and since, after all these years, yeah. We started off in a very, very colonial police, 77, I thought that there was a lot of emphasis even in the Indian police service, which is like the elite of the police. A lot of emphasis on physical training, a lot of emphasis on parade. We were so concerned about how we saluted, how every finger, it was really how you were a militarized kind of a police. That has undergone a very vast change. The composition of the police has changed. We have people who have studied law, graduates, etc., joining even at the constable level. Secondly, the population of India has changed. It is no longer ready to accept a police force which is just a force arm of the state. So there is a definite shift, a tectonic shift, in fact, towards a service-oriented police. It hasn't come out so well in the media, as Sundri is saying. Perhaps the police hasn't been able to project that change very well. Secondly, the need for police reform, which of course has been going on since 30, 40 years, there have been 3 or 4 reports on police reform. That still remains. As governments, state governments, central government...
But why have you not been able to implement these reports? Delhi police is supposedly not in favor of implementing this police reform.
No, that's not true. There's no police officer who's against it.
Okay.
But after all, as it is an arm of the state, you must have the state government and the central government on board. And no government likes to, by itself, dilute its own powers.
Sure.
So what is required here is that there has to be a dilution and more power available to the public.
So a conversation between the Delhi government and the central government, say the Home Ministry, which talks about the implementation of these police reforms. Is that correct?
Yes, not only a conversation there, but also at the state level. Also, an acceptance at a political level that the police is not your police. The police is the people's police.
Right.
That kind of an understanding is required. Let's get to the Nirbhaya case, which we were talking about. See, I was outside the Delhi police, so I can only look at it from outside. The behavior of the Delhi police initially, in terms of that it is not this one's case and it is that one's case, there definitely you can fault them. But after that, the speed with which they carried out the rest of it, their professional requirements which were there, they met very quickly. They were able to catch people. They were able to do all that. So now, but they got all the bad press for the initial thing, and they were not able to, the moment they tried to project that we have caught everybody, in fact, that also went negatively against them. That, such a massive thing has happened and all you're interested in is that you caught somebody.
Right.
Right? Your empathetic reaction was not sort of there. So that is how they got the bad press. To some extent, it also changed the Delhi police. Nirbhaya has changed the Delhi police in many ways. And of course...
In what way? In what way would it have changed the Delhi police?
Any case which involves the safety of women is not going to be ever, transferred or it's not my baby, it's not. No way.
So it's a high profile. It's in the center of attention.
Yeah, it's got the center.
Yes, and to add to it, For instance, all cases, if that used to happen earlier, all cases like emergency calls that come from women on number 100, for instance.
And you're in charge of number 100. May I just tell the audience that Sundari Nanda here is in charge of the number 100.
Yes.
So when you make a call or anybody makes a call in Delhi, she's actually the one who's the last woman, in a sense, who's in charge of all the stories that come there.
Yeah. So for, like for instance, we have made all calls pertaining to women, children, vulnerable sections of society after Nirbhaya, because it's all high priority calls. Now when you're looking, see, it's important. I think today it's important perhaps for you or anybody else to actually come and see the kind of circumstances under which, the conditions under which we function. You see, for any one woman, like when we're talking about Delhi. So for any one woman, a kind of a fight which she's had with her husband that morning is on number 100. But behind her is yet another woman who's being actually physically abused or stalked. So it is, for us, it is a constant juggle at priorities. Because to each woman, for that woman who's fought with her husband, she is important. But for us, we have to look at priorities.
So are you saying
no, what I'm saying is that, you know, I think right now there's a kind of a communication gap about what all the police and the government is trying to do for women, right?
But are you also saying that there are perhaps not enough women police officers? Would you say that you needed many more police officers?
Yeah. See, without fail, because you see today, for instance, that is something which ma'am already spoke about, and that is something which we do require, because if 50% of the population of Delhi are women, we require more officers. For instance, today in about 700 odd vehicles, 700 to 800 vehicles per day which we deploy across Delhi, the PCR vans which attend to the number 100 calls, not even 40 of them are manned by women.
Manned by women. That's an interesting way of putting it.
Okay.
Ms. Deol, what do you think? Do you think that you need sort of like a minimum reservation for women in the Indian police service?
See, women at the present moment, if you take an average all over the country, we don't even manage to touch 4 to 5%. 4
to 5% of women police officers in India?
In the entire country, yeah. The state with the highest representation is at about 11%, which is Maharashtra. And they also, because they've done a massive amount of recruitment of women police. Problem is that you cannot carry on under just, okay, let's say 33% reservation for women. That will mean that every year, let's say 100 people retire, that means you will take 33 women. Your forces are lakh strong. When are you going to get to even 30%? You know? So you have to do special women's recruitment. You have to give up male posts. You have to begin to change the face of the police. In fact, a part of police reform is also changing from a constable armed police kind of a setup to an investigative unit, to an empathetic unit, to a counseling unit, which means higher levels of posts have to be higher, and similarly you have to reduce the lower level of posts.
Right.
So definitely I think the presence of women in the police is you have to have it. The public wants it. Now after Nirbhaya, the way the laws have changed, the laws have made it that all crimes against women, for instance, you have to have a woman investigating. You have to, in rape, for instance, under the law you're supposed to. But there are no women investigators. In order to make an investigator, she has to have experience. She has to not only know the law, it's not simply knowing the law. It's actually handling cases, going to courts, taking statements, all that, which takes a good 7, 8, 10 years of experience before you can say, okay, this is a good investigator.
Right. I'm going to open up the House very soon to questions. So think up your questions. But meanwhile, let me ask Sundari. You know, you're talking about how Delhi police or the police service has changed in 11 years after Ms. Deol, certainly, but even in the last 24, 25 years that you've been a police officer. Now tell me something, does the VIP culture, within quotes, for example, in a city like Delhi, which is such a VIP city, right? Everybody is, tum nahi jante, main kisko janta hu. Wo mantri mera, is my relative. That kind of, you hear this all the time. Does that affect you as a police officer? Does it affect the service?
No, it doesn't affect me at all as a police officer. But when we are talking about services being given by the police to the citizens, yes, it is a kind of a impediment in people down the line delivering services, because you have somebody who's hauled up for something by the traffic police, etc., and who tries to show off his connections. But I think the force is also, having said all this, I think today the force, the younger, whether it is the constables, that component of the police which is actually providing services to the citizenry, I think they are getting more and more professional. And it's just unfortunate that for some reason only the bad things about the police are highlighted. I think some of the young boys and girls down there are really doing very well. And at this point in time, so even if someone comes to them and says, "Humko pata hai ki kya," or the best thing in Delhi is, "Ye lo phone pakdo, inse baat karo," kind of a thing, which is, so that kind of a thing, people today, our boys and girls down on the streets, they know how to handle that. Okay. You see, and having said that, I would like to tell the audience that after Nirbhaya, I'm sure you know that every police station in Delhi has a 24-hour women's helpline desk manned exclusively by women, and they also have a landline number 24/7. The women man that particular desk, and all this information is available on the Delhi Police website. And one more thing that we have done, which I'd really like to use this opportunity to flag, is the fact that the Delhi Police has gone on to, it's such a challenge. It was such a challenge before us, free registration of crime. Today, and
free registration of crime?
Free registration of any kinds of crime.
Okay.
Which is like anybody, even if you've lost a pair of chappals today, a case is being registered in the police station. So what I'm trying to say is that these things, I mean, of course, the media has been told about it, but perhaps somewhere down the line, I think more dialogue is necessary between the community around the police station and the police officers who police that community. So in order to facilitate that, last year, what we had done for the first time is 45 police stations in Delhi, where in fact this is an international police organization. 45 police stations in Delhi were subjected to citizens' audit.
Mm-hmm. Out of how many? 45
out of 161. Okay. 45 police stations were subjected to citizens' audit. The citizens
you have only 161 police stations in Delhi?
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
For a population
of 2 crores.
I mean, that's quite incredible. I think you should have 10 times more
2 crores.
That number.
Yeah, so we did this citizens audit of the police stations, where the citizens, in fact, were trained by this international agency as how to evaluate. They were trained, and they had 1 week. They could visit any part of the police station, and it was a very interesting findings that we came up with. And you'd be surprised that one of our police stations, which is the Barakamba Road police station, was in fact ranked one of the best in South Asia.
Okay.
Right? So, what I'm trying to say is that a lot of effort is being made to improve. And what ma'am says is so right. There's been a paradigm shift in policing from, a colonial policing to, policing for the rulers to providing services for the people. So that is a huge paradigm shift, because we're talking of a system, and we're talking of a system by the people, for the people, and of the people. We are not here talking of a private company or any system that can be changed at whims and fancies. Right. It's an enduring system. Yeah. So this huge paradigm shift in an enduring system is something which is extremely positive. And I think it's high time that we kind of, instead of just going, and police is such a thing like a doctor, one negative experience and your mind is made up for life. Yeah. I think we need to know more about each other to better services. Thank you.
Okay, so let me open this up to the audience. Do any of you have a question? Okay, the girl in the red. Yeah. Please identify yourself and also who you are asking the question to.
Yeah. I'm Rashmi Devan. I'm working with BSES Yamuna Power Limited. My question is to both of you. Ma'am, it's heartening to see that we have ladies manning very high posts in the Delhi police. I was wondering, since I am we are conducting some self-defense classes for children in the government schools, and we are very fortunate that Delhi Police provides us the trainers, and so we are able to conduct these classes. Ma'am, these classes being held in government schools, which first session is for the girls, and the second session, the afternoon session, is for the boys. There are, the principals that I have met in these government schools, they tell me of rampant vandalism that the boys indulge in. So I said, but why don't you tell, why don't you inform the police? Why don't you talk to your counterpart, the boys' principal, and ask him, he can call the police and let them give a lecture or something like that, so that at least the boys know what happens. No, it's complete lawlessness. Is there no way that the Delhi police can have some school contact programs where, since Ms. Nanda said that it would be a big psychological impact if they see women in uniform around. If Delhi police women or Delhi police men can go to these government schools and give just a lecture on, what you're supposed to do, what you can't do, what happens to you if you do something wrong. If you can just do that, I think there will be a great change in the way the boys are perceiving girls and the girls are perceiving the boys. This is a very unhealthy kind of an atmosphere that we're growing in.
Ms. Deo, could I request you to take that first? She's talking about lawlessness inside a school, but I'm just wondering aloud, is that the job of a policeman or a policewoman to curb vandalism inside a school? I mean, I'm sure that there is a law and order problem somewhere, but it's also a larger societal issue, isn't it?
Yeah, I know.
Just a second, if I can add.
Yes.
Because this leads to juvenile crimes.
Right.
Can we not just nip it in the bud? Can we not just,
But I'm just wondering if it's a Delhi police, meaning, is it a police issue? But of course,
I would like to, your suggestion is good. The police has got involved in terms of even giving you trainers for self-defense training. The police does have these outreach programs, but they are far and one will carry out, you send a couple of people, few and far between. The issue really here comes down to, how much do you want the police involved in all these things, and do you have that kind of numbers? You do not. And also to acknowledge that as a society, we have certain, requirements here. The school is not able to handle vandalism. The families are making their boys think that they can behave like this. There is, the media is not highlighting it. Hardly any educative or TV program is there. One police officer going and lecturing them is going to change their behavior.
Absolutely.
So you have to see the efficacy also of that. We can make an effort, but,
So, Ms. Nanda, these various elements that you've talked about also, whether it's the parenting, the school teaching, in this particular example, the school teachers, the police woman or man, the community, how is it that the Delhi police can perhaps forge a better bond between all these elements in the community? Can you do that? Is it your job in the first place to do that?
In fact, I think, in a way, this is one of the, the preventive aspects of the police has various jobs. One is the containing crime, investigating crime. One is preventing crime. I think this is a very important aspect of crime prevention, because what she mentioned is something very relevant. Violence amongst youth today is an absolutely disturbing phenomenon. When we look at the snatchings which happen daily across Delhi, the profile is so similar. 15 age group, the people who report snatching, age group 15 to 25, 2 boys on a bike. This is 80% of the time, this is the profile of snatchers. And even within schools, I'm fully aware. In fact, Delhi police, we are fully aware of it. And in fact, schools have to be, the teachers and the parents have to be taken into it as to why this violence is coming up during adolescence. And in fact, I think there are a lot of societal factors today, because Parents are not giving enough time to the children. There is a mismatch between the child's aspirations and the parental aspirations. And over and above that, a very important part is played by the information. I mean, there are images and images and images. And today, a copywriter's imagination as to what is success, whether success is a black BMW and beautiful tables set up with 2 wine glasses on the seashore. These images of success are so... Today we are actually slaves of perception. We are slaves of marketers. And this, you know, this kind of conflict in a child's mind as to what the child has, what the child... He sees reality, he or she sees reality, and what is to be, the marketing in the mind. This creates a child at that age is boiling over with confusion. And parents don't understand it any better. I don't want to be judgmental here, but I'm talking as based on my first-hand experience. Parents are equally confused. So somewhere down the line, there's something seriously wrong within each one of us.
So what does a policewoman do in that case?
A police, what the police, it's not about the woman or a man here. It is about what the police can do here, is in fact what we in fact it's a top priority with the Delhi police. We have advised, in fact, you would be, I should let you know that the Commissioner of Police, in fact, in our meetings, in fact, takes a feedback with how many schools. They are supposed to visit schools, the joint commissioners, the assistant commissioners, the DCPs are supposed to visit schools and interact. In fact, a lot of it is happening across Delhi. They interact, they go into schools in a major way, especially the women's colleges, the men's colleges. It is, a lot of it is actually happening.
Any other questions? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Monica. I wanted to ask once again about Nirbhaya.
What do you do, Monica?
I work.
Okay.
I work with the media group.
Okay.
Nirbhaya happened, and media was, of course, it played a huge role in doing, you know, what we are talking today. But is there something more in terms of, you know, the police action whereby, you know, there's a lot of, in the mind of these people who do it, you know, we can create that kind of a fear that this kind of a thing cannot happen again? I mean, can it start from that?
Go ahead, Sandri. Yeah, please.
Well, you see, I'll just come up with a personal touch. You see, I have a teenage daughter as well. And during Nirbhaya, when she had, and I asked her, like, you know, where there was a lot of activity on social media. And what she told me, she said, this anger, you know, and I was outside the Delhi police, and I wasn't in the Delhi police, but then this anger. And I was angry myself too, because what happened, Nirbhaya was to my understanding, Nirbhaya was a movement. Movement at what? And my daughter put it so succinctly. She says, Mom, I think people have had enough, we girls have had enough with what we have to go through in Delhi. So this was just a kind of a pressure cooker that, you know, everything had come on, and which is true. It is about and this doesn't happen in other cities. Here in Delhi, when you go out and the kind of various kinds of, you know, subject harassment which a girl or a woman goes out onto the road, whether to shop or that kind of harassment, the kind of attitude of the sexes towards each other in Delhi, I would put it that way, the attitude of the sexes towards each other in Delhi is something which is perhaps unique to Delhi. So Nirbhaya, yes, you're right. Nirbhaya goes much deeper than just, it is, if it's a crime, what happened to her, what happened in Nirbhaya is a watershed. Nirbhaya is a call to changing attitudes of sexes towards each other here in Delhi.
But you said something very important, Ms. Nanda, which is that this attitude between the sexes is something unique to Delhi. You've served in other parts of the country. Is it not like this? I mean, why did you say that? Tell us a little bit more.
No, that's because, you know, in other parts of Delhi, you don't have you know, today...
In other parts of the country?
Other parts of the country, you don't have this problem. Yeah. It's problem as in it's not so acute the way it is in Delhi. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that goes back to our own assessment of, we feel that it is really a North Indian issue. It's exacerbated. It's worse in North India, not just Delhi, but let us say the whole North Indian belt. The attitude towards women, is. But as I said earlier, this is a power thing. It is about power. And as a society itself.
What is it about power? What does that mean?
It means if I feel that there must always be somebody who is junior to me, somebody who is below me. It goes back to our assessment of ourselves as hierarchical creatures. That we've got to have, and a woman is fair game because she's obviously weaker. So, in every society, especially in North India, you will find that women suffer more from this sort of a thing than they do elsewhere. But coming back to, this is going into sociology and things like that, which we have to look at separately. But coming back to the theory of punishment itself, which I think is what the lady referred to, that there should be so much fear inside a person that you cannot get away with it. Now, Nirbhaya has spawned two special debates. One has been about increasing the punishment, that means hanging for, or death for rape victims. And the second one has been about the juvenile issue, right? In both cases, as a person who's working for human rights, I would say that we've gone the wrong way. Just the certainty of punishment is more important than the severity of it. In fact, if you start hanging people for rape, etc., you're going to find you'd hardly get any convictions because the judiciary becomes extremely careful to pass death sentences. And we've had the death sentence on our statutes for so long, whether it has resulted in a lesser crime, I don't know. Similarly, on the juvenile issue, everybody went, that juvenile must be treated as an adult. And in fact, I hear that it is on the cards that we are going to change that law also. That, I think, is a regressive step again. Because we have to get to what is it that the juvenile requires. How are we to look after institutionally the juveniles? Not that you put them in jail and make them hardened criminals. So we've gone off on two separate tracks. Fear is not the key. Fear is not the key. Just going on increasing the punishment is not the key.
I think
I want to ask one question.
1 second. Okay, go ahead.
We were talking about the juvenile crime. But have you seen how many drugs are being sold in schools and the porn films? We are social activists, and just now we did a case on a drug addict girl from a very big school. And she tried to kill her younger brother, sister, and mother. They have been walking all outside. These are the things, the drugs, which make them do the crime, snatch chains and everything, and do all sorts of crime. Thank you.
We're coming back again and again to these issues, but I'm just wondering, drugs, pornography, juvenile justice, delinquency, how do you deal with these issues as a policewoman or a policeman, and where do you fit in?
No, I really don't think there is a legal system to deal with it. And we are dealing with it.
The lady has a point that if there are these drugs which they have found from children inside a school or outside a school, it is the job of the police to...
Look, it's something. Let me tell you one thing. Police has a role. Like when we have, yes, it is our job to, as per the NDPS Act, it is our job to detect and prevent the peddling of drugs, etc., which is happening. But then we are again going back to the same thing. I think the writing on the wall is that we need to work together. Okay, what causes addiction in a child? Well, availability of drugs is one issue. And what causes addiction, what makes him take to it is because of poor parental guidance at home.
So this thing about
pressure. So we are getting back
needing to work together. I think that's the point. Is it that people are feeling that there is perhaps still a barrier between them, between the community and the police?
Well, it's a matter of perception, yes, perhaps we need more people. Police maybe has to get more into this preventive and make these things are happening. But perhaps, as ma'am says, maybe they have to be multiplied manifold in terms of prevention of, because these are all social issues.
Right.
Like how does police, in fact, how do you prevent, like about almost more than 90% of rapes literally are people who are known to the victim. So how does police prevent that? How do you get into people's homes? How do you get into rooms? How do you get into live-in relationships where later on rape is spoken of? How does police prevent that?
I think we're going to run out of time.
One question.
Yeah,
you talked about this image of having women in uniform all over Connaught Place, and that has really stuck with me. But the question that I'd like to ask the both of you is that why has it not happened yet? And going forward, what do you think the forces need to do to inspire women to join the forces?
Well, why it hasn't happened before, I think I tried to explain earlier that, we are still looked at by the state as a force arm of the state. They feel that having a lot of women, makes a people-friendly police, while a man makes a efficient, forceful police.
But why is it that you haven't had many more women like yourselves?
No, I think women, it's not that women are not ready to join. What she's trying to say is how can we popularize and make more women join? It isn't that. It's also that the police forces are not recruiting more women, So
but
is
the police ready for more women? Are you ready for more women?
Well, I mean, I've been working at this for a long time, so I know that people who were not ready have become ready. And there are lots who are still not ready.
Okay.
And it's a continuum. But as far as women are concerned, we want more women to join, and we want to make the police attractive to women also. Which means simple things like having bathrooms for women in police stations. Yeah. Simple things like that, where the atmosphere is woman-friendly. Right now we have in many places where women cannot even fit into the equipment which is bought for them.
Like what?
Like, for instance, even riot equipment, it's all bought for men. So if you have a woman who has to face a women's riot, she can't even, the helmet doesn't fit her, the visor doesn't fit her, the shield is too big for her. So we're not even at the present moment catering for women within the police
you have
force.
everything is still one same standard issue, which is...
More or less, but these issues are definitely being looked at now.
Okay.
Because we are having more and more women, because we are having more women protesters on, like I said, 50% of the population.
So tell me, you're a younger police officer. What are the three things that you would like to see in a more modernized police force?
I would like, women bring with them many special qualities to the table. So I would in fact say that, because way back I think Delhi police was a pioneer. I think it happened well when ma'am was in the police, in Delhi police, is that we brought women officers as duty officers in the police station. A duty officer in the police station is a cutting edge. Any aggrieved person goes first, meets the duty officer. So it was a conscious step by Delhi police to introduce women there. Simply because I think women have more empathy.
No, now what would you like to see? Three things that you would like to see.
Yeah, I would like to see, the system, when you're talking of the systems of governance in the police, use the innate special qualities in women, which is empathy, which is good communication skills, and women are very good with technology. Like, for instance, in the Delhi Central Police Control Room, which handles all emergencies, and mind you, we get something around an average of 25,000 calls a day, right? 25,000 calls a day. Most of the important component here are women. Women are very good with technology. Most of our computer network of Delhi police are all handled by women. So I would like to see these things, this thing, where women their capacities are utilized better without holding it against them, that because they are women, they are this, that. I would also like to see more facilities for women, and I would like to see a certain degree of hand-holding between the men and women, because I feel that men and women are complementary to each other, whether it is a force, whether it is society. So I would like to see that kind of mutual support and hand-holding.
Okay, would a man like to ask a question? It's not banned. You are allowed to ask questions. So would anybody like to ask a question, or is it... No? Okay, anybody else? We will perhaps take the last one or two questions. Go ahead, in the middle.
Hi, I am personally working, and this is regarding the call center numbers that you've been talking about. This has been a personal experience. There was at one point of time when I did call the helpline of the police, the helpline number for the police. There was this particular caller who was harassing me, and I did call up. When the number was given to those people, and they tried and tracked it down, every time they would call, apparently that person did not take the call. And I must have complained 3 times because I wasn't getting a reaction. I was still being harassed. The first time I was so furious, I actually called up and saying, what is it that you're doing? They said, madam, हम क्या कर सकते हैं? हम तो phone करते हैं, वो बंदा phone नहीं उठा रहा. मैंने कहा, अगर बंदा phone नहीं उठा रहा तो इसका मतलब आपका काम खत्म. हम तो इतना ही कर सकते हैं कि phone कर सकते हैं, वो उठाएगा तो उठा के क्या करेंगे? हम उसको डरा सकते हैं, धमका सकते हैं. That is it.
Can you just ask your question, please? Yeah.
So the question is that the end to the entire story? I mean, if the police is only going to, shout at that person as to stop calling, is he going to stop calling? I mean, what use is that helpline number then?
No, I'm sorry if you had that experience, but there's a huge issue in Delhi that we have about, these harassing calls to women, people ringing up women and harassing them. This anti-obscene helpline, we call that. So there we offer 3 kinds of services. One is most of the women, in fact, this is for the larger, so that knowledge of the audience here, most of the time, 80% of the time, women want that, unko bula karke, matlab unko phone karke, you kind of question them, threaten them that, from the police. And most of the time, in about, maybe I would say in about 75% of the cases where the lady wants this particular service, this is very effective. The person stops harassing. So, in your case, well, I'm sorry, maybe it was an aberration, but we are constantly trying to improve our services. And right now, where cases where we find that there is no, where these things are not happening, there is recurrence of this call, then from the control room, we transfer this call, because this facility, this anti-obscene facility is provided at the police control room. Then after that, we transfer such calls to the local police station, the police station where they look into because stalking is a very serious issue. See, harassment on telephone is one thing, stalking is another thing. So once we find that no result is being got by just handling in the police control room, that's transferred to the police station. See, there could have been instances. We are constantly trying to improve our services.
Aman, finally.
Yeah, my name is Balaji. I work for Care Today Fund, which is a CSR initiative of the India Today group. My question for both of you is that there are a lot of NGOs in Delhi which are working on issues related to women.
You just hold the mic a little bit closer. We can't hear you.
Can you now?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. There are a lot of NGOs in Delhi which are working on issues related to women empowerment and women's safety. That's one side. And can the police, in terms of, use them as their eyes and ears and, sort of take inputs on intelligence from them and, work in partnership with the NGOs to ensure better safety for, the women who are especially vulnerable in certain communities and, localities and all that stuff. Is that possible at all?
I think that's an interesting
suggestion,
which is that the community and the police work much more closely. Especially if your police force is so small.
No, in fact, I'd like to tell you one thing. Delhi police does a lot of work with NGOs. In fact, a lot of work with NGOs. And today in every police station, especially after Nirbhaya, there are members of NGOs who are permanently, NGOs who are logistically based at various locations in Delhi. There's one member of an NGO who's permanently interacting with the station house officer. And today, if any lady or any girl reports rape or anything in the police station, immediately the IO calls the NGO first. Right. So it is to that degree of deep interaction is there. And various NGOs, all the 161 police stations have access to NGOs of that area who come in whenever a child or a woman comes in with a complaint of rape or any such thing. So we are absolutely open to working with NGOs.
I'd like to ask another question, Ms. Deol. A lot of Northeasterners, especially in Delhi, have been subject to a lot of harassment. People from the Northeast and people from Africa, for example, of a different color. Why do you think that happens so much in Delhi, and why is it that the police is not able to deal with it as we hope it should be able to?
Well,
one of the things that we do not appreciate anyone who doesn't look like us, who doesn't have the same cheekbones and doesn't have the same color. That is something which we all have to ask ourselves, why we are like that. As far as the police force is concerned, I think the police, even in the African case, for instance, those are individual cases. I think the police performed admirably in that African case. You have to remember that there was a Delhi minister who was sort of there, and the police still stuck by their guns.
Mm-hmm. This is the Khidki case when...
Yeah, where the Africans were. So that I've looked into as National Human Rights Commission. In fact, compensation has been awarded to those people. And so I think the police behaved very well in that case. As far as the Northeast, I've worked myself in the Northeast, and I think Sundri has also been posted in Arunachal Pradesh. The Northeast people, again, they are now becoming a part of society. For instance, I've just been to Bangalore.
Part of Delhi society, maybe.
Yeah, but all Indian society. Otherwise, the Northeast was, to a large extent, only Northeast. It shows a lot for the development, the movement, the outgoingness of these people, that they have been able to take this kind of prejudice, which is manifest in many cases, and they have been able to still get on in life and move higher. Bangalore, for instance, the entire service industry, hotel industry, everywhere there are, Northeastern. In Delhi also now we are finding more and more. So, it is not that the police has done its bit in terms of preventive and, getting across to the Northeast people, etc. But it's something which society must also question. Why we are like that.
And secondly, when you're talking about Northeast societies, there's something which I really love about them is, this issue. There's absolutely, like in Mizoram, I just returned last year from a 2-year posting in Mizoram. I think their societies are so balanced. You never find this problem of crimes against women in the Northeast. You never find eve teasing. You never find, you never find eve teasing. I think there's a lot we have to learn from those societies.
I think that's very, very beautifully put, that North Indian societies have to learn so much more from the societies or from the states of the Northeast. Any other questions? Okay. In that case, I will ask my final question to both of you. And in the NHRC, Ms. Deol, you've been in the National Human Rights Commission for some time now. Do you think that this was a logical progression from the time you were in Delhi Police to the NHRC? Why didn't you stay on in Delhi Police? Do you think there was a glass ceiling that you could not break? There was a lot of talk that you may have been Police Commissioner of Delhi. That didn't happen. Is there a glass ceiling?
Well, I think that women, not only in the police, but in other areas also have to work much harder than men, just to keep, just to get to the stage where they are sort of recognized as serious contenders. So that is one issue. Second is, of course, the police commissionership is an appointment. You reach the top of your career, and now what kind of an appointment you get is up to the government, which decides. So you can have aspirations, but you can never hold it against anybody. As far as I'm concerned, I got my chance to head a force in Arunachal Pradesh. When you head a force, it's a very, very major responsibility, and I think that was done. Which other appointment is given, it's up to government. You just have to accept that. But to return to the first part of your question, the National Human Rights Commission for me has been a very fitting end to a career. I retire shortly. It has widened the perspective, which was police, which was concerned with people who were involved in crime or people who were suffering from crime, about law and order, etc. It has gone further into the kind of difficulties that people suffer, like education, like health, and therefore makes you go to the real basic structure of why these problems are being manifest in society. So I personally am very happy to have worked with the National Human Rights Commission at the end.
I think I'd like to bring this to a close, but ladies and gentlemen, you will agree that we've had a remarkable hour with two outstanding police officers, Kamaljeet Deol and Sundari Nanda. Give them a hand, ladies and gentlemen.